When railways first began, an engine driver was the fastest person in the world. We looked up to these men who controlled 100-ton monsters, and we wanted to be like them.
Very much a glamour sort of a job for a little kid. I want to be an engine driver, controlling this huge, powerful monster. You used to see them head out of the window in the old days, and you'd always wave to them. And you'd always wave to a train going by, and usually the driver would wave back. If you did, you thought you were dead lucky.
A lot of train spotting, I suppose, was either spent on bridges, station platforms, and as you got into it, more serious train spotting, you had to go and visit the engine sheds where engines were based, where they were serviced, lived, whatever.
And you know one thing that sticks in my mind? I went there one Sunday morning, and right outside the shed, brand new from works, was British Legion, 6170. It was beautiful. Of course, I had no camera them days. Just 6170 British Legion in the boot.
Trains were all about. I suppose I must have started collecting numbers with everybody else at school, perhaps 11 or 12 years of age. You're in competition with everybody then. You've got to collect these numbers and underline them in the book. You've got to have as many as all the rest. So there's a bit of a, as I say, competition there.
Of course, having arrived at the engine shed, that was the easy part. However long it took you to get there, because train spotters weren't normally all that welcome in engine sheds, because steam locomotives, sometimes they can be very quiet and they can catch you unawares, and it was a potentially dangerous thing to do, with walking around the engine sheds. But boys, being what they were, occasionally would be brave and go and ask the foreman's office for permission to go around the shed. More often than not, you just took your knife in one hand and your notebook and pencil in the other, and you got on with the job, writing the numbers down as quick as you could and keeping a low profile and getting out as soon as you could.
Although I never took my train spotting books when I went train spotting, I always had a notebook, wrote the numbers down in rough, and then when I got home I transferred my rough notebook to a posh notebook where everything was nice and neat, and then from there I put them in my train spotting book and underlined them.
There were some railings around the back of the coaling plant. One or two of the railings were sort of pulled apart. Boys sort of sized people could get through there. Used to go across this bit of empty ground and then through this railing and take the risk. The other way of doing it was to go in with another party, because you used to have party bookings like Northern Rail fans, and if you knew Northern Rail fans were going to Crewe North, you used to go and hang around on the outside until they arrived in the bus and mingle in. Rail fans would have, say, 50 on the pass. So if you got in before, like 49, one of their lot had to argue. So you managed to get in, and then there was a row going on at the gate, because somebody who was legitimately going to get in was being held back.
But the smoke and the smell, the sound of the steam, they were magic as far as we were concerned. I mean, there was a tremendous glamour about the steam locomotives. There was excitement and magic about the big locomotives. And again, not just the express passengers, the smaller engines, the freight engines, they all had their own magic.
I can remember around about the time I was collecting them was when they'd condemned all these LNWs and they were putting a 2 in front of the number so they could use the numbers for such as Black Fives and Jubilees, you see. As I remember it, on the North Westerns, the Prince of Wales class and Georgia 5th class and all them, they had numbers like that, and they put a 2 in front so they could use the number. And 2 also told everybody it was condemned and it was just running under borrowed time.
You always had your ABC, which had all your numbers in, but the other things that this guy Ian Allen used to produce were loco shed books, which listed all the engine numbers, the shed where the engine was based. So you knew if you wanted a particular engine number, if you went to that shed, there's a good chance of actually seeing it. And then there was a book, which was the shed directory, which actually told you how to get to the sheds. For instance, Crewe North, the directions from the station to where the shed is, it's on the west side of the line, north end of Crewe Station. And the footbridge leads to the shed from number 1 platform. It even tells you if you wanted to walk there, an alternate route. Turn left outside the station into Danwich Road, first right into Pedley Street and bear left with this road, and actually it says here you go through an alleyway at the side of house number 39. Turn right into the end of Station Street and walking time's 5 minutes.
Platform 4 at Crewe was the favourite, and you'd be waiting for that great cry from somebody that said there was a semi coming off shed. They always had quite a significantly bigger tender, so they'd be backing down off the shed to go north, say to Scotland. And there was something special about a semi coming off shed.
At the south end of Crewe Station, there used to be a Jinty, like a station pilot. And me and John Lumby were sort of stood around it watching, and the driver said, "Do you want to come on the footplate?" So he did it very eagerly, because it was dirty, dark, hot, I always remember the driver saying, "You can put some coal on if you want." So John Lumby put the first load of coal on, like 2 shovelfuls, and I put 2 shovelfuls on. And I remember when we got off, we watched the pressure gauge and it had risen by £5 or something or other, so we were really dead chuffed.
Managed to get a walk around Crewe North Shed, and I was amazed, and I thought, well, I think this is a job for me, and I was really made up with it.
But then we used to get these permits for Crewe Works, that was the other thing. Started going there, and for 10 and 6 we used to get this hallowed piece of white paper which said British Transport Commission. It had your name on it. You went in off the street into one of these typical railway sort of dusty corridors, you know. Of course, had bare boards, these buildings, but they never seemed to sweep them, so there was all this sort of dusty atmosphere. And you used to gather inside, and then this guy came along with he used to have one of these long railway coats, and he'd take all your names and your pieces of paper off you. And then you went out through a door at the side of the building into the track. The idea was you were going around the works to get numbers. He used to have all the numbers written down on the back of his hand in biro. He used to stop us at the entrance and he'd say, "When we go in the erecting shop, you're going to see engine number so-and-so, so-and-so," and he'd reel all these numbers off. You went in the end of the paint shop, and of course they had things like Hardwicke and all the other, Cornwall and the LNWR preserved engines in a row at the end of the paint shop. But then engines that had come off overhaul in there, so there'd be, again, semis and Scots and things, all beautifully shiny and painted, ready to go out again. At the end of the paint shop, you went through the yards leading up to the erecting shops, and there'd be a few engines in there then, queuing up to go in, so they'd be sort of semi-derelict without tenders and that. We went in the erecting shop. Now, it's a big building, it's a very high building, obviously it's like 2 engines high. They've got to carry them around on cranes. Very, very long. There's probably 2 rows of engines and a row in the middle which were bits of engines that had taken off. There's a noise going on all the time, and hammering, and the cranes running, these sort of geary sort of noises that cranes make. Guys wheeling trucks around with parts on them. I imagine we went in at the end where they stripped engines down, because I can remember seeing an engine on a pit on stands, and of course the engine as a whole was pretty dirty, because it was just being overhauled. And then you get these stacks of parts with engine numbers stenciled on them, in the centres, so pieces of cladding or pistons or whatever, I mean, a lot of the engines there were quite noteworthy, but Duke of Gloucester was one I remember seeing there. That's the only time I ever saw Duke of Gloucester.
Well, now I think people see train spotters as the popular phrase anorak, isn't it? That it's somebody who's a little bit strange. When we were all together, I mean, there'd be crowds of them. I mean, there'd be, perhaps as many as 50 lads on Crewe Station. So we felt when we were doing it, it was something really good.